Hello, welcome back to Inbox Academy. Today we have Hillary Gale with us. Hillary is an agency owner, and I think it's going to be very interesting for a lot of you to kind of dig down into what that means, how email plays a role in agencies, how you can play a role in an agency. So to kick things off, Hillary, how do you like to describe yourself and what you do?
I love that question. So, I am a financial marketing strategist. I work primarily with financial advisors, but really anyone in the finance industry. So, I also work with bookkeepers, accountants, CPAs, financial coaches, just different service providers in this industry who are working with clients one on one.
Awesome. And what is the name of your agency for everybody to know?
It is Moneta Copy. So when I started the agency 6 years ago, it really started as like a copy and content agency where we were doing things like mostly blogs and social media posts and things like that for clients. And as both I have evolved and the industry has evolved and the client's needs have changed, it's really shifting more into this full service marketing agency where we do much more than just content and copy.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's kind of a big shift I'm seeing across the board that like
Right.
freelancers are doing less nitty-gritty and a lot more like big picture stuff. Um,
Yes, yes.
so tell me, since we are the Inbox Academy channel, how does email play a bigger role in, or how does it play a role at all, I should say, in your bigger marketing ecosystem and
Yeah.
packages that you offer to your clients, things like that? Like, do you typically offer email in a package? Is it one of your go-to services?
It is one of my go-to services. I would say for financial advisors specifically, it's very, very important, but in a different way than I would say other industries maybe. Like
Mm.
financial advisors absolutely have to lean into email and use email, but they can't use it as like it's not going to result in quick sales for them. So they really have to think about email as like one of their biggest and strongest nurture tools because the sales cycle for financial advisors to get clients is very, very long. It's a very high trust industry. They're basically asking their clients, which depends on their fee model, to hand over their life savings to them and like to share some of their most vulnerable things with them. And so the sales cycle can be months long, before someone becomes aware of them to when they're comfortable enough even to book a discovery call. And then after that discovery call happens to then become a client, it can be up to 18 months typically in the industry. So email is super, super, super important to keep the people in the audience and the people in the funnel nurtured and warm throughout that long sales cycle. So that's how I typically think about it, um, as selling newsletters and nurture sequences and things like that, rather than like these really like high performing sales sequences, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I think it's really important for email marketers in general to understand that, selling a $5 e-commerce product is not the same as selling these really high trust big packages, and even something that is more of like a product that's still a $2,000 product or something like that can be somebody's life savings at that point. So, you know,
Right.
understanding, how big is that investment, how much trust is that going to take, and therefore how long is this email cycle going to take? Like email can be good at landing in front of somebody and making a sale, but one of its biggest strengths is building trust over time and staying in somebody's inbox over long periods of time. And so when you have a service like that where you need to build that trust first, it's so good at that. But yeah, you have to
Yeah.
understand that every email you send isn't going to return $2,000 every single time you send an email.
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges for me too, is like talking to advisors about the ROI of it. I mean, the ROI is impossible to track when you have a sales cycle that's that long, right? So it's it's tough from that standpoint. It's impossible to say like, oh, this email that I wrote or this email sequence that I wrote for somebody generated $70,000 in revenue or whatever it might be.
Yeah. So is that a challenge with your clients? Like, do you feel like a lot of them understand how important email is, or is that something you have to kind of educate them on? Yeah.
I would say it's kind of 50-50. Like, but I do find myself doing a lot of educating on it. And just very recently, it's been helpful for me to get really personal, like with my clients that we do email for, and really ask them, like, okay, what results are you seeing? Because it's not always ROI. Like the results that my clients see from their emails is typically like, oh, my clients are coming to meetings with me more prepared. They're asking questions about like the topics that I've been sending in the email newsletter, and that's really great. Or I know that my email newsletter actually sparked referral conversations. Like I haven't necessarily closed that client yet, but I got introduced to two new leads because somebody got my email newsletter about estate planning and was like, "Oh, I'm going to introduce you to my parents because they've really been needing to get this done." Something like that. So, I don't know if that exactly answered your question, but it just it's made me I've become more aware in the past few months, I would say, that because it's so hard to track ROI, I have to be really like good about asking my clients, what is this doing for you? And then
Yeah.
that helps me educate, you know?
Yeah, that's true. I think across the board, sometimes when we are always looking at one number, like the revenue number, or even like I had a recent client that, their biggest goal was getting people on the wait list, and they weren't super happy with the exact number of people on their wait list. But then we looked at their overall email numbers, dug a little deeper, and it was like, wow, you're getting a lot of replies and you're getting
Yeah.
these really high click rates. Like, okay, we're doing some things right here, It's like maybe people aren't seeing the importance of the wait list, and that's where we need
Yeah.
to invest some more energy or something like that. But it lets you, steer the strategy from there, but it's so important to dig a little deeper and see all of the strings that are attached to this kind of,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because this particular client that I'm thinking about that said, "Oh, clients are showing up more prepared," and I got two referrals, based on this last newsletter we sent. Prior to me asking that question, he was really unhappy with his open rates. He was like, "The open rates are only at like 30%. I think they could be a lot higher." And I was like, "Yeah, I agree with you." And also open rates like they're so like they're not accurate, it's so hard to just say like this is good or this is not good. And then when he told me that, I was like, and why are we worried about open rates right now? Because like this is awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, you understand the impulse there. It's like anytime you can increase open rates, you'll hopefully see more of all of those results. So, of course, that's
Yes.
there. But also, open rates are harder to get than ever before because people are getting more emails than ever before. It's a
Right.
constant growing thing in the world. But yeah, I love that perspective. And definitely, email is always going to be useful when you need to build a relationship. So I can see how it's really impactful for financial experts like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So are there any situations, I'm curious, where you see email not being useful to your clients? Like, are there any particular
Um,
clients that you wouldn't
no.
recommend it for? No.
No. Let me think about that question a little bit harder though, because I'm sure there is nuance. I feel like a lot of financial advisors in particular are really excited about social media and like growing on social and like building these great audiences. And there are examples of that in the industry of advisors who have done that really, really well and get clients purely from social media. But I always think that there is a role for email to play that's going to amplify those results. It's going to provide some insurance against that strategy because we never know when algorithms are going to change and things like that. Um, so there's very few, I just think there's very few situations that I would not recommend email to a business owner.
Yeah. I love that perspective. I mean, that's how I feel, but
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
there have been like some very, very rare occasions, and it's usually, somebody who's really early on in their journey and doesn't even have a way to receive emails yet and things like that.
That's totally fair. Most of the people that I'm working with have an established business. So even if they don't even have an audience online, they have a book of clients that they need to retain. And that's often like email is a really great place for them to get more referrals as well. They lead to referral conversations, which is how most advisors grow their business is through referrals. And so I actually find myself recommending email even more strongly to people who like maybe don't have a social presence yet, or whatever it might be. I'm like, this is the one thing that you really have to
Yeah.
have. You don't have to have a social presence. You can go speak at conferences, you can go speak in your community and have an email list to capture the people that see you there. I just think it's like always important.
Yeah, and I love what you said earlier too about like reminding people about algorithms because and I know this from, my own scrolling is like I might see a creator and follow them and I see their posts two or three times and then I guess maybe I didn't interact enough for the algorithm to think and then they're
Yes.
gone and they're just gone forever and I forget
Yes.
they exist. And then if I
Yes.
actually like go and look at who I follow, I'm like, who's that person again? Whereas email,
Yes.
like you are always going to be landing in one of their inboxes. If you are sending them
Yeah.
that email, it's landing there. Whether they open it or not, that's up
And
to the quality of the newsletter and how many other emails they're getting and all those other factors, but it's there and it's showing up in their feed. So it just
you
makes it
can
invaluable.
that's something that I say to advisors all the time. Like, you can't control in any sense who's going to see your LinkedIn post or your Instagram post on a given day. But if you send an email, again, like you said, depending on which of their inboxes it shows up in, I would say you can kind of 90% guarantee or maybe 80% guarantee that they're at least going to see your name. And that's not something to discount, I don't think.
Absolutely not. Okay, so I want to kind of shift gears a little bit here. We've been talking about how email fits into the businesses you work with and everything. Now, I would love to talk about because I know I get this question a lot. We have so many people in our community that are interested in working for agencies. So I would actually love to talk about how like email, fits into your agency, what you because I know that you hire like subcontractors and employees and things. Do you have any tips for anybody that's interested in working with agencies?
Yeah. So, Audrey, I might give you some kind of hard answers to this question that maybe we can work through a little bit because as an agency owner, there are some real challenges here to working with subcontractors, and I would love to work with more subcontractors. So I want to like put out there what some of those challenges are, and maybe we can
Yeah,
work through those together a little.
absolutely.
So I have been running my agency. Well, I started the company in 2020. I started hiring in 2021 towards the end of 2021. And I've gone through a lot of iterations of like who has worked in the team. It started as only working with subcontractors, and then after my first maternity leave, I came back and I started bringing on like W-2 style employees to work in the business. And there were a few reasons for that. One of the reasons was by bringing on W-2 employees, it just provided a little bit more stability, I think, for my agency and the clients that they were serving. They were able to develop the relationships. It was kind of easier to train them towards my processes and things like that. One of the other reasons was it was really hard to, and again, I'm like, I need to be careful about how I say this, but it was hard for me to be able to pay subcontractors what they deserved to be paid and still make it profitable for the business, if that makes sense. Because
Yes.
the subcontractors are also running their own businesses, of course. And so it was hard for me because when they were just doing the writing for me, I was still paying my account manager who was coordinating everything. I was paying myself who was doing the strategy. Like there were so many other people that needed to be paid that the writing of it was really only just one small piece of it. And so that was my challenge, I think, with bringing subcontractors on. So, finding that balance between raising my prices enough with clients to where it was still profitable for the business to keep running and paying everybody else that was involved in a project for the writer. So, with that being said, though, on my side of things, when I hire employees, there's like so much more training that I have to do with those employees to make them great email writers. And in fact, I think that's one of the biggest challenges that I have is I still write so many of the emails myself because I have so much copywriting background knowledge, that it's hard for me to pass that off to some of my employees and feel like they're really applying all of these great copywriting principles and email principles. Like they are fabulous content writers. They can write blogs, they can write, social posts all day long. Email, I think, is it's so important to get email right that I still like having an expert. I 100% see and know the value of like having an expert in the agency who focuses on email. So that's my kind of hard answer, I guess, of what the challenges are as an agency owner of like bringing in subcontractors to work just on email.
Yeah. So would you find it more valuable? I know you mentioned, having managers and things like that. There's different forms of subcontracting. So I've definitely been in subcontracting things where I am doing just the writing, right? And then there's others that are, actually interacting with the client, getting the research that they need, writing the emails and then uploading them and doing basically taking that whole service off the agency owner, hopefully. Is that a format that, you have tried before?
No, and that's a really good question. And I think that the challenge there is that email is rarely like it for my clients, it's usually a small piece of a larger package that we're doing with them. And so it's always made more sense from my perspective to like have me and my account manager doing like the high level strategy stuff with all of the pieces that we're working on for them and then email being a small part of that. But I am interested in this approach that you've kind of mentioned of like having someone like really come in and manage just the email strategy and having that be like almost the centerpiece of their marketing strategy could be an interesting model to explore.
Yeah, interesting. It's definitely something I've seen with different agencies approaching subcontractors and, doing white labeling and things like that in just wildly different ways. So I think it's fascinating to hear from somebody who's out there doing it. And
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And like, I would love to talk to some more email subcontractors or like email, experts about what that could look like. Because I do think that sometimes as a business owner, you get so siloed into the way that you're doing it that it ends up kind of working against you. And so I am like very open to more creative solutions, essentially.
okay, so do you have any tips to people who might want to work with an agency, whether they want to subcontract or white label, or, that can be a whole gray area in itself, but anybody who, is thinking about approaching an agency, any tips for how to do that or how to, present yourself? What kind of skills are you looking for? Things like that.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think um if you can do what you can do to figure out like how big the agency is that you're pitching. I know that can be hard to figure out sometimes, but understanding like are they a smaller agency like me or are they a really big agency that like has really big ticket clients to where, pricing is not going to be as um sensitive for them? That would be good because I think that that maybe influences the way that you're pitching yourself or the way that you're approaching the agency owner or whoever you're approaching inside the agency. So I know that for me, as like a small but profitable but growing agency, my question is always like, how can I get the client the best service possible without running my agency into the ground so that I can't do business anymore? Because my other thing is like, I always want to pay people well, right? And so I think that if someone were coming to me and pitching themselves, I would want to understand like, A, is it going to work with my business model? Am I going to be able to afford them? And B, if I can't afford them, but they still want to work with me, how do I pitch it to my clients a higher price so that I can white label them essentially to where my clients are going to be like, "Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely, let's do this." So I think I don't know if that's like the clearest answer, but those would be my like first questions, I guess,
But it's
when
almost
I'm
like
trying to.
if they can take some of that weight off your plate of like making sure that this package that maybe they're pitching you is already showing its value, showing the
Yes.
benefits in a really enticing way, then that's going to be easier for you to take to your clients and be like, hey, do you want to add this on?
100%. Yes, you just said it so much more succinctly than I did.
No, I love that. I mean, you have that's the idea that I'm seeing from that. Yeah, and it makes perfect sense. It's like how can I make this as easy as possible for you, the busy business owner, the or agency owner, in order to make that profitable still for your agency. It can't just be only profitable for the contractor or the white like
Right, right, right. Exactly. That's
yeah.
exactly it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I feel like we got so many good nuggets in here. And to wrap things up, I would just love to ask you, what are you working on these days and how can people find you?
Thank you so much for having me. So, I'm actually working on a couple of different offers right now that I'm excited about. I'm like continuing my podcast, which is called the Finance Marketing Podcast. It's for financial advisors who want to get better at marketing. And if people want to get in touch with me, I'm on LinkedIn way more often than I should be, all day, every day. That's kind of my primary channel. So Hillary Gale Meehan, I have the podcast, and then our website is monetacopy.com if you want to check us out.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you all like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and get on our email list as well if you want to stay in touch. Bye, guys.
Thanks.